Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Schneeberger and I'm a graduate student in the Department of English. And for this week there are going to be two presentations. For the first one, Glynn and I are going to be discussing responding to student writing. And for the second one, Julianne and Janine are going to be looking at alternatives to grading student writing. So they're two very closely related topics and they go really well together for this week's discussions. So for the responding to student writing section, we're going to be looking at the Nancy Summers article called Responding to Student Writing and section 2 of the Chudy article, which is also called Responding to Student Writing. And with the Chudy article, we're going to be looking at a specific text within that, and Glynn is going to be discussing that piece, and I'm going to be focusing on the Nancy Summers article. So before we start, I want to take an exercise we learned from one of our past readings and apply it to this week. So we're going to do a little brainstorming to get the ball rolling. Since everyone should have done the reading at this point, I want you guys to take a moment and go back in time and think about writing papers in middle school and high school. Now answer this. How did you feel about seeing those comments on your papers? Did they confuse you? Did you understand why you received the grade you did? Now, keep this in mind as we go through this week's readings, and hopefully you'll be able to do better for your future students if you feel like in the past teachers didn't respond exactly how you thought they would. So beginning with the Nancy Summers article, Summers emphasizes the importance of teachers' comments on student writing. Teachers' comments on student writing tend to be vague and not text-specific. So what she means by that is that teachers are grading so many pieces and have so many students whose writing they have to look at that they tend to just take a phrase and apply it to every single piece of writing that they're looking at. So when students get these papers back, they don't know what to do with the comments. Most of the time, after getting a paper back, students just stuff it in their folder and move on to the next assignment. There's no motivation to improve upon their writing. So when comments are too vague, students don't know how to change their mistakes, or they're not sure what to focus on. And I think everybody can relate to this. Getting a paper back and seeing the red pen marks all over their paper, there are words circled, there are errors pointed out, comments everywhere. And then there are comments at the end, so there's a lot going on. And it can be overwhelming and students don't know where to start in order to correct their mistakes and get better in the future. So this brings us to what Summers says teachers need to do to improve their comments and therefore motivate their students to do better. She said if teachers focus their attention on commenting on the meaning of the text, students will be able to see that the meaning is more important than stylistic errors. Meaning should be step 1 in the process, with stylistic errors correction being step 2. So in figuring out what really works best in the classroom, I talked to some of my fellow students in the graduate English department to find out what their approach is to grading student writing and how they keep their students motivated. My good friend Rochelle, she teaches an English 101 class at Villa Maria College, and her students come from a diverse range of backgrounds. They are all recent high school graduates, and even though it's a college classroom, I feel like a lot of those same ideas can still be very well applied to a high school classroom. She said that in commenting on her students' writing, she tries to point out both what they are doing well and what they need to improve on. She said that they need to develop their papers meaning more, and she encourages them to focus on the thesis, and supporting it first and foremost. So what she seemed to emphasize is that you need to make some positive comments along with the constructive ones so that students can see, okay, I can do this very well. Now let's see if I can improve this. And Taryn, who's also a friend in the program, agreed with Rochelle's reproach. She said that when she gets a paper back and it has both positive and constructive comments on it, she is more likely to want to improve upon her writing. And I think this is a good approach to commenting on student writing. If you can balance the positive with the constructive, I think it would give students more confidence to move forward and to keep going and to really want to keep writing, because I know writing can be a very daunting task for a lot of students. And if you take this approach, it would definitely help them to want to do better, which is our job as teachers. So in terms of commenting on student writing, it seems that taking a two-step approach and focusing on the message first and then the stylistic errors is key. So in my high school, we didn't write a lot of papers that we got an opportunity to do revisions on. But at the end of the year, we had one major writing project, and where each student had to complete a major paper on a topic pertaining to our Rebels and Misfits class. And it was meant to prepare us for the expectations of the college writing process. And when we did this, we took each step in the process one step at a time. So we first developed our thesis and worked on the core of the text in order to support our thesis and get our ideas across. And then, after we had done our drafts for that, we then looked at the stylistic errors and the stylistic points that we needed to improve upon. And it allowed us to see that although stylistic errors are important, the meaning is more important. And I find that that's what a lot of students miss, is they're so focused on, oh man, does the comma go here? Am I using the correct punctuation point? Did I capitalize that? And yes, although that is very important, students need to focus on getting their ideas across. And in trying to find articles to bring in to support this, I did find a lot of good sources that dealt with the same ideas. These will be posted. I'm going to put them in a folder on Dropbox, and they'll also be in the description of the YouTube video. So in the first article, I don't know if you can see it, it is called Responding to Student Writing, The Consequences of Some Common Remarks by Patrick Sullivan. And this short piece echoes a lot of the same ideas from the reading. At one key point, and I'm going to read it, Sullivan illustrates the key of rewrites, which is what we've been kind of talking about. He says, for most students, rewriting consists of retyping a paper to correct grammatical and spelling errors. Larger and more important considerations, logic, organization, idea development, and support for the thesis are almost always ignored. So, time and time again, in college, professors have allowed for rewrites on papers and always emphasize that rewrites should correct major problems and major plot points in our writing. And in high school, there wasn't a lot of opportunity for improvement because we were always moving so quickly, as we've seen in talking about some of our past readings. There's so much to cover, so we're always moving so quickly that there's not an opportunity to rewrite and for students to get better. So how will students know to correct their mistakes or how to correct their mistakes if they're never given an opportunity to? And I think as teachers, we need to keep this in mind that yes, although there's a lot to cover, it's a good idea to give students an idea of the editing process and take them through it so that in college or in, I guess, the real world, they're not blindsided by the fact that ideas and supporting your ideas is more important than commas. So in another piece, there's a chart, and you'll see it when I post it in the Dropbox. There's a chart in Responding to Student Writing, Teachers' Philosophies and Practices by Dana Ferris. And he provides what teachers believe to be the best practices in responding to student writing. One point that the chart states is that students should get comments from both teachers and peers in order to have their writing looked at by multiple readers. And this was a point that I hadn't really thought of. Having multiple eyes on the paper could, one, take a little bit of pressure off the teacher, but also give students the opportunity to discuss with their peers, because a lot of them are at the same writing level, and I think it would be a great asset to use in the classroom to create small peer groups at different points in the writing process that would allow students to say, hey, I'm having trouble with this point. Could you give me an idea to help me correct it and move forward? And I think I discussed this in one of the comments that I've made on another presentation, but I mentioned that one of the most helpful things for my writing was one of my introductory classes to the graduate program. And this class, there was about 12 of us in it, and we worked on a major paper. It was a 20-page paper, so very long, and it took most of the semester. But we took it from start to finish, and both the teacher and my fellow students offered feedback, and I found that it greatly improved my writing. It was very helpful. Sometimes students would come up with or see something in the paper that the teacher wouldn't have noticed. And I think it's very helpful in improving students' writing. So if teachers were able to implement small groups within the classroom, it could help students improve their writing. And most of the teachers in the aforementioned piece utilize multiple draft style approaches that allow students to improve as they go and offered comments at each stage of the process. And this way students are receiving feedback as they go and are more willing to improve if they're not just getting all of these comments at the end. So in closing, for my section, the biggest takeaway from this week should be that as educators, we need to motivate our students to do better. And we need to offer encouragement to get our students to become questioning readers. And I want you to keep this in mind as we move over to Glynn's part of the presentation, where he's going to be looking at the Judy piece, and a lot of these same ideas exist within that. So I'm going to say goodbye now, and I'm going to turn it over to Glynn. So enjoy.
Hey guys, my name is Glynn Molinich. I am a first-year graduate student here at UB, obviously. I am in the Education Studies program, and I'm also on the UB football team. So you guys just finished up watching Sarah's portion of our responding to student writing video. So to start off my section, I'm going to start with the Judy article, but more specifically the Lynn Holiday section titled Writing Students Need Coaches, Not Judges. So Lynn Holiday, she's a professor at Prescott College. She teaches a beginning level writing course there, and she starts off by saying that her students' writing abilities range from reasonably confident to hopelessly inept. And I can say definitely for myself, and I think for the majority, if not all of you guys out there, that sometime in your academic, professional career, wherever that may be, you've found your writing skills in that sort of space. You've either felt extremely confident in what you can do, or just no matter what I write is just not good enough for this professor or instructor. It's just whatever. Can't deal with it. So, Holiday starts off by saying that the majority of her students are generally negative about their writing abilities because they don't really want to expose their potential clumsiness in their work. She says that they act this way because of neurosis, and those are past traumatic experiences. And it's a pretty good analogy. I think, like I said, the majority of people, if not everyone, in their writing careers has had some sort of traumatic experiences with their writing, and with their writing more specifically getting graded. We've all gotten that one paper that has completely marked up with red ink, having that big fat F at the top, and no real feedback or no helpful feedback on that paper. It's all just sort of things are crossed out. Um, there are little notes on the side, but you don't really understand what they mean because they're pretty vague. Um, so that's definitely what a traumatic experience writing-wise would look like. And writing is one of those things that is very hands-on. It is, the more you do it, the better you get, and the more comfortable you are with doing it. Well, if you are having those traumatic experiences while writing, you're not going to want to write more. You're not going to want to try to develop your skill set. You're just going to want to try to get whatever grade will reach a passing grade and move on with your life and be happy that you don't have to write anymore. So Holiday basically says the best way to fix this is to minimize judgment, which in turn is minimize grading. Now, grades are they're a necessity in a sense, just like the SAT, ACTs. You can say whatever you want about them, but they're necessary in today's day and age to go to college and to see where you're at on a sort of like on a level scale. But while giving feedback, limiting grades and limiting that judgment helps immensely with the development of a student's writing. So focusing more so on the positive aspects of writing, what they're doing well, what they've mastered, what they're doing exceptionally well. Focusing on that will create more interest, more of a positive reaction from the writer, rather than just pointing out this, you're doing this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. If they're more involved and immersed into their writing, and they are confident in what you are giving them feedback on what they're doing correctly, they're so much more willing and able to attack those things that they're not so confident on and develop those aspects of their writing. Yeah, so like I said before, like, writing is one of those things that you need to put the time in, you have to practice, and if they're getting just a C or just or D or just something that's passing, and there's no real feedback or there's no constructive feedback to see how they can do better, they're not going to be in the mindset to want to go practice. That positive reinforcement will trump the negative every single time, and is so much more beneficial to the development of a student's writing. Like I said before, I think everyone has experienced this. I know I have. I've had an English teacher in high school that literally the only thing that they would write after you would hand in the paper would just be the letter grade that you got, and no real constructive feedback. If anything, it would just be like, take this out, scratch, like, what are you saying here? Just vague markings, vague comments, and I never felt like that was helpful. It was what it was. But I also had a English teacher, I think it was like a year or two after that, where they were very hands-on. They were very helpful with their constructive criticism. They would put clear comments on the margin on what I could improve on, what I was doing correctly. It wasn't until at the last page of my paper where I saw my actual grade. So I basically had to flip through my pages and look through all the different comments and feedback before I got to the last page, and that's what my grade was. So I thought that was very helpful. Moving on from the Chudy, I found another article from the UB Library database titled "Responding to Student Writing Online: Tracking Student Interactions with Instructor Feedback in a Learning Management System," written by Michelle Smith. This, I thought, was a very interesting take on what we're discussing in class, just because a lot of the times when we're talking about student feedback, responding to students' writing, we're talking about a physical paper, putting pen to paper and writing down our comments, our critiques, all that stuff. A different aspect to this was more so for college, doing that online. Online, you can do things so much more. Students are access to so much more things quickly, and they don't have to. They can see what the grade is right away. They can just go to the My Grade section of whatever program they're using, and you can see their grade right there, and that's what the majority of time people care about, is just what they got on the assignment. They're not going to look at the feedback section unless they are personally obligated to. So the article starts off by saying, like I just said, online courses often make grades visible apart from the instructor feedback. So there's two separate sections. This feedback is the way, obviously, to help the student develop their writing skills. If they don't even look at the feedback, you can't do your job. As the instructor, you can't help them learn. You can't help them develop their writing. Students in this article, studies show in this article that students are less likely to read the feedback if their grades are accessible separately. Like I just said, if you can literally just click the My Grades section, see what you got, and go on with your day. So basically says to help combat this for the instructor-wise, putting your feedback alongside the grade. So maybe not using that My Grade section would be more helpful for students to actually look at your feedback, understand it, try to hammer down those areas they need to improve on, so putting your feedback together with the grade that you gave them would be better for their developing their skills. That's what I'm trying to say. So that was just a cool take, I thought, on the article, or cool take on what we're discussing right now. But I got another article from the database. It's titled "Taken at Our Word: Making a Fundamental Agreement When Responding to Student Writing," written by Johnson-Shull. She starts off by saying, I thought it was a really cool quote, is that teachers have the power to help students critically think, hone and project their voice and opinions, but they also have the power to shut them down incredibly effectively. And I think that's so true. As teachers, we inspire. We have the power to inspire. We have the power to make students think in ways that they've never thought before. I personally have had countless teachers that have made me do that, to expand my way of thinking, to inspire me to want to become a teacher in the first place. But I've also had teachers that have just made it such an absolute drag to learn the material, to even want to practice or get better at the material. I just wanted to get the passing grade and go home. We as teachers have that power. So I thought that was just a really cool quote that she started off with. It kind of ties into all the rest of the information I'm going to go through. But she starts off by saying the majority of a teacher's time is consumed by writing feedback on papers that are little to no use to the student. Like, most of the time, this feedback might not even get read, or it might not be fully understood by the student. This suggests that people have such difficulty with writing because people have such a difficulty giving good, concise feedback because there is a lack of agreement through instructors and the people who grade writing, because there's a lack of consistency on what's good writing, what's bad writing. I personally believe that it's grading writing, not just the grammar and the specifics of the language, but you can hand in a paper to one professor, hand it into the same paper to another professor, and get two completely different grades just by the stylistic choices and what is good in one professor's eyes relative to another. And that can be either very encouraging to a student or very disheartening. That one professor that gives you a good grade, you have the power as the professor or the teacher or instructor, whatever that may be, to hone their voice and develop that voice because you gave them a good grade, and they feel like they can expand and develop that writing style. But if they think they did everything correctly and you're the other instructor that gave them a poor grade just because you didn't like their style of choice, that you can totally shut down that student. Now, that by no means says that like you need to give every student a good grade, because that's obviously not realistic. That's not the case. But I believe that, well, in this article, what they're saying is that getting a clear, concise feedback to students rather than not being so vague, not having as much gray area in while critiquing, writing, and giving feedback. If we as teachers are more direct, clear, concise with what we're trying to say, what we're trying to develop skill-wise for the student, that is so much more beneficial. So yeah, that is basically all three of my articles that I talked about in my section of my video. Very similar to what Sarah was saying in the first section, all kind of the same type of message as a whole, giving clear, constructive criticism, taking the time to help develop and encourage the student into practicing their writing and developing their skill set is the only way to really get the most out of giving feedback for your students' writing. So yeah, that is my section of the video. Hope you enjoyed. See you guys around.